All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Ben Peck here on another beautiful day in Aggie land on the All in Aggies YouTube channel or podcast, wherever you may be listening or watching us today. Be sure, if you haven't already, subscribe and like and comment whatever you like about the show and whatever dialogue you want to discuss. As we move on today, what we're going to be talking about is a few things from the weekly press conference for Texas A&M. We've got one from all three major coaches, the head coach and the coordinators, Mike Elko, talking about battling complacency, as well as offensive coordinator Colin Klein talking about getting the wide receivers engaged in a way that develops high-end talent while also keeps defenses guessing in terms of the versatility. And then Jay Bateman talking about how do you handle the embarrassment of riches that you have on the defensive line. All right, now let's get going. Excuse me, I had a little hiccup going on there. But let's start with Mike Elko. He was at the Houston Touchdown Club today, said something to the similar essence that this answer that we're about to play for you, talking about the need to stay focused. He's talked so much in wins, losses, kind of throughout the year about the challenge of like playing consistently is just, I mean, think about it for you. It's kind of a universal thing. It's staying locked in, staying focused on a singular task, especially with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds for hours at a time and being mentally dialed in for the moment, every single rep. And just think about like your attention span doing anything, right? Like it's football related. It's mentally taxing, and of course, like the fact that you're physically pushing yourself to the limit makes it a little tougher. But at the end of the day, it is so much about that mental focus. So I tried to ask Coach, I didn't do so in a phenomenal way. He had a little fun at my expense, but was trying to ask, here's my thing with the focus and all that. Is it one where, you know, as you lose games, obviously you have to stay motivated. You have to fight apathy. But as you win games, you have to fight complacency and still find that hunger. I'm curious from a coach's perspective if sort of the fight against complacency is easier than the fight against apathy in that sense. And Coach, I thought gave a real interesting answer on that, and we'll take a look.
Yeah. So in terms of keeping the thing moving forward and keeping the team together, like the longer your goals stay intact, the longer you're playing meaningful games, the longer you're involved in the fight to be the SEC champion and all of that stuff, right? That keeps the kids' attention. I don't know that makes it any easier to get them to focus on the moment. I think that's always your ongoing battle. I think when the season goes off the rails and you lose your goals or you lose sight of some of those things that you wanted to achieve and accomplish when the season started, I think there's other challenges to how you get the team motivated, how you get them focused on what's in front of them. So I'd way rather be in the spot we're in, but I don't know that it necessarily helps keep young people focused on the immediate 6 inches in front of their face. I think that is just an ongoing, everyday battle that we have to fight with this day and age, and really forever, but even more so sometimes with this day and age.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much tracks correctly. One thing that's always been fascinating to me within college football specifically, you see it with other sports too, but especially with college football compared to other college sports, is sort of you get on a roll, you get on a wave, and you just catch that thing and take it to wherever the destination, whatever destination it has determined for you. Like the ability, for example, Mizzou coming into College Station. Now here, Mizzou's maybe a good example. On one hand, momentum and pure record doesn't solve all problems, right? Just because you're 4-0 coming into College Station doesn't mean you're going to find a way to get a win against A&M because you have momentum and you're on this roll. You still get exposed eventually if the gap is big enough. But in close games and close matchups, you can that buy-in, that belief, all that stuff does feel like it builds up to where, for example, like LSU, for example, the idea of A&M being potentially 6-1 coming into LSU at home. How you feel about that compared to if they were 4-3, even if the 4-3 was like you saw about as good of a team as you have to this point. So, like, let's say Arkansas, you find a way to lose that game because it was sort of up in the air for a little bit. And then I suppose it would have, let's say Bowling Green. Let's say Bowling Green, you just like one little drive at the end that you didn't have or you did have. When you go down and you get a field goal and make it a two-possession game, you don't do that. They come down and get a touchdown. Those games are about 90% the same, or maybe you'll lose to Mississippi State next week. But, if a 4-3 compared to a 6-1, if we just change the Arkansas and the Bowling Green games, for example, you saw the same game being played for 90% of those plays, but you just change a few consequential plays that flips the outcome of the game. But then your feelings going into a game when you're 4-3 compared to 6-1, it doesn't quite hit the same. And I think part of the reason that is because of the focus factor, as Coach Elko talked about, and the belief. And I think there's something to be said, like the Bowling Green game, for winning when you're not playing at your best, right? Like, I always think that is a huge determinative factor for me when I look at teams on the outside, just as a neutral observer, is if this team is having a bad day and they can still beat you on a bad day for them and a great day for you, that speaks volumes, and that should be something to alleviate concerns. For A&M, I mean, to this point, I think the Notre Dame game, Notre Dame game is a great example. I think that was by far the worst performance of the year for Texas A&M. You could maybe throw Bowling Green up there, but I wouldn't necessarily, because they were still largely in control of that game, it felt like. Although if they make that field goal that they missed close at the end, could have been a little more interesting. But yeah, I mean, if A&M, even in their worst performance against Notre Dame, had a chance, and Notre Dame has turned out to be, they've got some flaws, but they're far from a perfect team, but they're far from a bad team. And A&M still finds a way to almost, get that win, be in that game towards the end. You needed one stop at the end really to get the ball back with a chance, and then go down and potentially tie the game up with a touchdown. Will Lee, who's played so great, if he maybe just has a slightly better break on that ball, he can be he can maybe get a pick six. I think it was third quarter, I want to say. So that's something where just little plays can swing the game. And as opposed to Missouri, who they were far from close against A&M. Like, A&M's never had a game where they've just been completely out of it. And that, I think, gives me confidence. The fact that they're stacking up wins gives me confidence. Obviously, it's kind of what Coach gave me a hard time about that we didn't put in there. Self-explanatory, you'd rather be winning games than losing games, but how much do you actually gain from those wins? I think it is interesting to hear kind of the coach's perspective on that. All right, let's keep it moving to Colin Klein. We talked about yesterday him talking about Terry Bussey. If you haven't already, go check out that video. By the way, if you want extended highlights from the Missouri game from our angle on the field, be sure to go check that out as well, all on the All in Aggies YouTube channel. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and keep coming back. We got good stuff here, and I'm learning more and more about how to kind of make this a more visually appealing product. So be sure to keep coming back. We talked about Colin Klein and Terry Bussey the other day, and something we've touched on is the receiving core and how A&M goes about the passing attack and utilizing the different weapons they had. I had a moment a couple weeks ago where I said I've kind of given up on the idea of a real number one receiver on this team, as in terms of like what the formula looks like to when the team is operating at peak efficiency. Like, I don't know that you're always going to have no, or think about it this way. Like, I don't know that you could say, I mean, you can't, we've seen it. You can't say Noah Thomas or Cyrus Allen or anybody has like a floor of, well, they're going to catch at least like 4 or 5 balls for 40, 45 yards at the minimum. And then they're going to go up from that all the way up to, maybe 100-yard games and even more than that, 8, 9, 10 receptions, 100, 115, 125-yard games. Those high-end performances are there, but I don't know that you have anyone on this team where you say, like for basketball, for example, like Wade Taylor for A&M, he's going to get you at least at the low end, like 10, 15 points per game. Like, you can just pencil that in. I don't know that you have that with this receiving core. And as I was saying earlier, I kind of said a couple weeks ago, I've given up on the idea that you're going to have a guy who is the guy. And really what the identity of this team is going to be, what it appeared at the time, and still might, is it's the versatility of options, not just at receivers, but tight ends, running backs, and the amount of different receivers, which is going to be what throws defenses off and what keeps people off balance. So the challenge with that, what I asked Colin Klein about this week, how do you continue to be versatile and have different options while at the same time allowing guys to develop into sort of a number one like target? Not that it necessarily has to be the number one guy on this team, or you only have one number one type of talent, like as in LSU last year, they had multiple. Not to say that that's not possible, but how do you both develop the unpredictability of a diverse passing attack while also having guys develop into a type of talent who can beat anyone on a one-on-one on any given day? And as with most things, it's a balance, it's a mix, but this is how Coach Colin Klein, offensive coordinator Coach Colin Klein, had to say to that.
Absolutely. I think it's there are certain things as we continue to evolve and kind of move forward to strategically put those guys in personnel things to get certain people in certain spots. Again, those are very percentage based estimations sometimes based on what coverage you're going to see and where the ball is most likely to go, but not guaranteed to go on some things. But then I think that's also a really good number. And someone told me after the game, we had 10 different guys catch the football in our last ball game, and that's a credit to the entire group, understanding that, hey, it's all of us in it together. There's going to be multiple tight ends, multiple receivers, multiple tailbacks run and catch the football. And I think that is part of what is and will continue to make us hard to defend. So it's finding a mixture of both, because we got to get the ball to our best players, but then it's going to be by committee and all of us in it together too.
So, like I said, I guess to be expected, it's a mix and it's a balance. I thought it was interesting about saying, you can draw up certain plays for guys where the percentages would suggest you have a good idea certain guys are going to be able to get the ball and get a chance, but you don't just come out and say, hey, we're going to Noah deep or going to Jade on this one-on-one. You kind of have to say, okay, I would imagine based off the percentages, we're going to get a look for this guy or look at this guy on this matchup, but it's all kind of probability based, which was interesting. But yeah, just looking at the receiving numbers for A&M so far. So, 6 games in, 252 yards for Noah Thomas, Cyrus Allen, 204. A lot of that came in the Florida game. Average. Here's maybe a better way to go about it. 42 yards per game on average for Noah Thomas. And that leads the team. 34 yards for Cyrus Allen, 21 for Jade Walker, and then just going back to total yardage, 86 for Terry Bussey, which most of that came in the last game against Mizzou. Theo Nordstrom, 2 of his 4 catches coming for touchdowns, 69 yards for Trey Watson as well, 68 for Le'Veon Moss, 66 for Jabri Barber. Jabri Barber higher on the team in terms of total receptions. He's fourth behind Thomas, Allen, and Walker, and then Barber is fourth. And then, Moose Muhammad's a guy that's still floating out there. Coach Elko has talked about needing to see consistency from him as something that's going to get him on the field and get him more looks, more reps, and all those things. I think Moose Muhammad can be a factor. He can be a game breaker in terms of, you win an impossible one-on-one matchup. How does that manifest itself moving forward? Unsure. Donovan Green is still, I think, another guy who's getting, back up to speed. I don't know if looking here, I don't know that he has a reception this year. Donovan Green does not have a reception this year, which is, wow. I would have, I felt like I remembered him at least getting one against some of these teams, but Donovan Green is another guy, obviously coming back from injury from last year. So that's to be expected. Micah Tease hasn't hauled in a catch. He's been targeted a few times, kind of coming in late in some games. But yeah, I mean, really, when you look at Cyrus Allen, Ja'Day Walker, Terry Bussey, Theo, Trey Watson, Le'Veon, Jabri, Moose, Amari, Shane Calhoun, those are sort of and then EJ Smith. That's 11 guys and that are like legitimately kind of in that rotation, if you want to call it that. And 10 of them were able to get a reception against Mizzou. So I think that bodes well, especially I'll be interested to see with Connor coming back, if maybe that changes a little bit, especially for guys like Noah Thomas and Ja'Day Walker, who have a little bit of rapport with Connor Wigman more so than, Cyrus Allen does. Now, I know Cyrus Allen had just as much of a connection with Marcel Reed that he did to Connor Wigman, but just the number one reps from last season carrying over into this season, Thomas and Walker and even Moose have that kind of rapport, like I was saying, with Wigman, you would imagine more than they would with Marcel Reed, just based off the game day, the game week reps that they got throughout the course of the season. So I don't know. It'd be interesting. I still don't know that you're really going to come down and say, any of these guys are going to have all SEC type numbers. I mean, at this point, if any of them doubled their output for the season, your leading receiver would be just over 500 yards, which is kind of wild to think about. But maybe you pass the ball a little bit more with Connor Wigman moving on through the rest of the year. That's kind of how you open up your run game. And, the run game stays solid, but the pass game can kind of be more similar to what we saw against Mizzou than it was for the first half of the year. All right. And then finally, before we get out today, let's talk about that defensive line. Oh, my goodness. We all knew it, right? That the defensive line was going to carry the defense or be what the defense could lean on. But they've really come through, not just with sacks, in the last game, but just kind of disruptive. I think that's probably the best, most encouraging thing you can say about a front four is they're not just getting the sexy stats with sacks and forced fumbles and this and that. And by the way, they've had a couple where they've basically forced an interception based off, pressure. But they're starting to get through and wreak havoc in the pass game and in the run game. When we talked to Jay Bateman, I asked him about how do you maximize it? And beyond what we get a lot of times is like, well, you're so deep and you rotate guys in and out. And so that keeps guys fresh. And that's true. But I've always felt like that didn't really do it for me in terms of like the extent to understanding why and how things play out the way they do, right? Like, I guess that was sort of like an elementary surface level explanation, but I was curious, like really, like get into the weeds for me. Tell me how certain guys bring certain things to the table and to what extent, keeping guys fresh, how that actually like not just pays off, but what that looks like, right? Like what does that allow guys on the edge to do that they wouldn't be able to do if they were playing all the time? And so this was Jay Bateman talking about his defensive line.
Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton are like their problems on the edge a little bit, right, in the run game. And so I think the problem is they can't play the whole game. And so I think, Sean's done a great job. Tony's done a great job of managing, because we're a little bit different when Cassius is in there or Ryland, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, I think we've got some really good players. I think the depth that D tackle has really developed. I thought Rodas Johnson played great Saturday. So I think the unit itself has come along. We're playing more guys now, which I think is making the frontline guys fresher and more successful later in the game. But I think, in the run game, we've been able to isolate some one-on-ones for some of the bigger edge players, and I think that's been really good for us.
All right. Couple things that were interesting in there for me that I like to hear. Number one, a big shout out, well-deserved, and hasn't been touched on as much as it should. The guys on the interior, especially the depth. Albert Regis is maybe, I know he didn't come in as this. I want to double check because he got to campus before my time in Aggieland, but I don't remember him coming in as like this super heralded, massive recruit the same way we did other guys. I mean, yeah, 4-star recruit on the edge, but 24/7 composite, 450 in the country, 3-star guy out of LaPorte. And he's coming, and he's just reliable and just sometimes doesn't get all the praise and all the limelight as guys like Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, even DJ Hicks, and obviously Nick Scorton. But man, he feels like a glue guy on the defensive line. He plugs up a spot, he fills holes, he gets in the backfield, he makes plays, but he also just kind of opens up opportunities for other guys doing his job. And he's pretty, from everything I can tell, pretty fundamentally sound. And I rarely see a play where Regis gets bullied off the ball or dominated on a block that leads to a big play. So Albert Regis, like always here for giving a guy like Albert Regis his flowers. And then, yeah, you talk about Rodas Johnson coming in, DJ Hicks providing a little versatility, all sorts of guys. Tamano Pepe, well, when he gets in there, I'm just kind of scrolling through the list here. And Solomon DeShields has been interesting, sort of coming in off the edge on some blitzes and stuff. I know he's more of like a linebacker edge, but he's been fun to watch. But the thing I really liked to hear was with their run game, they're trying to set up one-on-ones on the outside for Nick Scorton and for Shamar Stewart to make plays, to say, we'll like try to find a way to where all the other guys can pile in. If you're going to have to double team guys, you're double teaming the guys on the inside and allow for, if we're putting all my horses and all my money on that horse of Nick Scorton and or Shamar Stewart making a play and beating his man, I'm comfortable with that rather than, pushing it into a linebacker coming into the play late or something like that. And really, as Bateman, can't remember if he said there, but at the point of attack, right? You're not letting things string out to the point where even if the play is not really there, there's enough time to maybe adapt to salvage what you can. It's sort of like there was the play that Nick Scorton had, the tackle for loss against Mizzou, coming off a scoring drive for A&M, and it's just like as soon as I think it was Noel gets the ball, you got Nick Scorton in his grill, and he tackles him for a 4-yard loss and kind of already puts you behind the chains on that drive. So I thought that was interesting. And as he mentioned, Cassius Howell, Ryland Kennedy bring a little bit different, a little more speed on the edge, a little more just kind of a different look in terms of pass rush. It's not as much just sheer power and force, but it's also it's versatility. You could potentially drop those guys back a little bit, have them go out at least in maybe like a soft, shallow zone coverage, or you could blitz them, and then you could, with your linebackers, you could disguise blitzes that way. Not to listen, I'm no football whiz or expert X's and O's guy, but just that seems to be what they bring to the table. And Rylan Wiggins, shout out A&M softball. Rylan Kennedy is a guy who has a lot of versatility, and I think is just emerging into what can be a real intriguing prospect in a couple of years. I know he's only on the second year on campus, but we talked about it as big track guy myself. Love a guy who's got versatility in terms of his skill set, his athleticism. It's not just size, strength, speed. It's or just size and strength. It's speed, it's agility, it's acceleration, all those things. So love to see that. Love to see the guys making plays, and really interesting to hear that perspective on how, when we say rotate guys in, what does that look like, and we know what it looks like, but what does that actually mean and translate to in terms of how you do that? Get the guys on the edge, get your stars isolated in one-on-one positions, because then they can make plays in the backfield, make one-on-one plays, and blow up things and make life difficult for those offensive lines. All right, I think that's all the time we got for you today. Again, bye week vibes. Stay tuned later this week. Could have an exciting guest come on. If not this week, next week. We've got more stuff coming down the pike, just in terms of, Mike Elko. We haven't really talked about what he talked about on Monday. And then Mississippi State, of course, coming up next week. So be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. It doesn't cost you anything, and help us take down the All In Horns channel. We are still maintaining a slight edge over them at the moment, but friendly competition here. Let's try to make this the biggest channel on the All In Sports Network, which y'all have so far. We appreciate it so much. Again, Ben Peck here with All In Aggies on the Rogue Sports Media Network, and we will see you back here on Thursday.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.